Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, an El Nino update as storms continue to pass through the state, and education advocates talk about what they expect to see from the legislature this session. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. A state lawmaker plans to introduce a bill that allows Arizona to ignore President Obama's executive action on gun laws. The bill, introduced by Representative Mark Finchem of Oro Valley, would bar Arizona state and local governments from using employees or finances to enforce or support a presidential action, a Supreme Court opinion, or a federal policy that, quote, is not in pursuance of the Constitution and has not been approved by Congress. The bill does not define who would have the authority to determine the constitutionality of laws, legal opinions, and orders. El Nino apparently is here. The much anticipated weather pattern that promised an abundance of rain and snow in Arizona is pushing a succession of storms across the state this week. Here with an El Nino update is ASU climatologist Randy Cerveny. The big El Nino as far as we're concerned. Good to have you back here. We've been talking about this with you for a long time, and you were saying just watch. A big one is brewing. A big one is here.
A big one is here. The pattern finally switched this last week, and this is probably the kind of situation that we're going to have off and on for the next 3 to 4 months. So if you like this last few days, be prepared for a lot more coming.
Let's define terms. What is El Nino?
Well, El Nino is not these storms. I've heard forecasters saying El Nino is here as in the storms. Well, they are, but they're the result of El Nino. El Nino is going on in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's a warming of the Pacific Ocean. When you warm the Pacific Ocean, you change the circulation, you change the storm track and the jet stream. And that's causing storms that normally would come up and hit Oregon and Washington to come down here into Arizona and California.
And we're seeing those effects. Right? Is that part of the ocean warm right now, or was it warm earlier and that's affecting things right now?
Both. It has changed the pattern. It actually started all the way last May. We were talking about that,
yes.
and had some of the storms in the monsoon as a result of El Nino warming. But it's really warmed up within the last couple months to hit a peak about now. And so we are really going to see the effects now coming for the next few months.
Okay, so when would the peak happen as far as the effects are concerned? In a few months? Sooner rather than later? When do you think the high point's going to be?
Well, what we're going to tend to have is these kind of storms that we're having right now. Not anything like a super hurricane type of storm. We're going to get just storm after storm after storm. And that's what's happened in the Pacific Ocean. There's just a train of storms, one coming in after another. That's likely to continue for the next few months.
And as far as the El Nino effects, we had it last year, kind of late in arriving, but those effects got here. Is this a continuation of last year? Is it complete and separate from the El Nino from last year? How does that work?
This is continuation of what we had last year. It's been building. We expected it to build and hit a max last year, but it kind of held off kind of just below the threshold of what we call El Nino. Finally, by last May, it started building up, and now it's hit its max within just the last couple weeks.
And really this week, I think we have a graphic here of how much rain we've had. We have 3 storms moving through this week. That's a lot of rain.
That is a lot of rain. Notice California is also getting those rains.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing to keep in mind is this is just this week. Remember, this is going to be a pattern of storms, not any individual storm. So this kind of pattern is likely to happen next week, and then we're going to have more situations within the next 3 to 4 weeks of this kind of train of storms, one coming in after another.
Are they already forecasting something like this again next week?
Yeah, we're going to dry out over the weekend, but then there's a good chance that we're going to have some storms by the middle of next week again.
El Nino effects, is it like what we're seeing, kind of a persistent moderate rain and snow as opposed to violent storms?
Exactly. That's the kind of storms that we're going to get. And in terms of helping us out, they are the perfect kind of storms. When you get this slow, gentle rain, it's able to soak in the soil and really be drought busting. And so this is exactly what Arizona and California have been wishing for the last 4 or 5 years.
And I noticed the snow level, the level for, from rain to snow, like 5,000, 6,000, sometimes maybe 4,000 when the weather cool. That's not so bad. That's good snowpack, isn't it?
That's very good snowpack. In fact, California right now is already at over 100% of their normal snow cover. So All of this kind of stuff is going to help, because when we get to snow cover, that even helps even more, because it slowly gets into
Yes.
the reservoirs as opposed to being a big rush event. So this is exactly what we need to kill droughts.
Yeah, that snowpack is fantastic as far as the high country is concerned, and that means we might not, like the forecasting here, might not see such a bad fire season in the high country. However, in the lower deserts, I seem to recall when we get a lot of rain in the winter, we get a lot of fires in the summer.
And you're exactly right, because what's going to happen is all of this rain in the desert is going to create massive amount of flowers. I mean, this is going to be a wonderful spring for flowers. It's also going to be a horrible spring for us allergy sufferers. We're going to have a lot of pollen. But then when that dries out in May and June, it's becoming the perfect fuel for the potential for desert wildfires.
Yeah, we have to watch out for that. El Nino winters, El Nino effects on winter. Okay, we're seeing it, we're going to see it. Does it lead to a particular weather pattern for the spring? Can we look forward to something this summer because we're getting this now?
Well, this is the linkage to the summer monsoon is pretty weak. But the situation here is that this is such a strong warming of the Pacific. This is such a strong El Nino event that the effects aren't going to be easily gotten over. I mean, we usually have an El Nino event that might influence our January and February rainfall. Now, this is going to go on into March and probably April, causing
My
above
goodness.
normal rainfall here in Arizona.
So with that in mind, is this such a strong El Nino that it could drift over into next year, or could we just have a monster La Nina next year? It's just too hard to tell right now.
Well, the forecast models are suggesting that by next summer, June, July, we'll be knocking off the temperatures in the Pacific, so that we probably won't have a repeat of this next winter. But this winter is going to probably be enough for most people that want to have a good sense of rain.
And real quickly, the impact on the rest of the country, the rest of the world, what are we seeing? Is it the typical El Nino effects here?
We're seeing different places are impacted differently. For example, we get a lot of rain during most El Ninos. Australia is burning up. They are in drought, and they're going to have some nasty wildfires over the next couple months because of their impact of El Nino's change in the wind patterns. Different parts of the world get impacted very differently. Argentina is having massive floods. Depends on where you are as to what kind of effect these changing weather patterns have.
Before you go, real quick, I've been doing this for quite a while here, and I remember El Nino's always been kind of a topic, but it seems within the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, this has really become a strong predictor of winter weather, hasn't it? I mean, this is coming true.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that we hear a lot of people saying, well, you can't predict climate change. Well, El Nino is a climate change. It happens about once every 5 to 7 years. We've gotten really good at predicting it. So yes, we're starting to understand how our climate actually works.
And you were telling us all along, so take a bow there. You got it right there. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining
My
us.
pleasure.
This week we're hearing from various leaders and advocates on what they want to see from the upcoming legislative session. Last night we spoke with business interests. Tonight, those from the education community get their say. Joining us now is Arizona Education Association President Andrew Morrill, Chuck Essex, Director of Government Relations for the Arizona Association of School Business Officials, and Jennifer Johnson, the Executive Director of Support Our Schools Arizona. Good to have you all here. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Andrew, we'll start with you. What do you want to see from this legislative session?
Well, let's see a legislature pay close attention to what Arizona's voters and citizens are saying. In a border state, a conservative state, we've moved public education funding to the #1 issue that everybody is talking about, the need to retain our excellent teachers, far too many of whom have left already, but we still have thousands of great classroom teachers and other committed folks working in our schools. Let's take voters at their set of priorities and do what we can to make Prop 123, the inflation settlement, the first meaningful step in addressing education funding, certainly not the last.
Chuck, what do you want to see?
Well, we want to see the business community continue to support education. I watched your show last night, and that's the first time I remember in many, many years where there was no talk about tax cuts. The whole conversation was about education, because I think they realize how important that is to economic development in the state. So we want to see, as Andrew mentioned, Prop 123 is so important to school districts around this state. We want to see, in charter schools, we want to see the effort, the legislature continue to support that effort and realize it's a first step. It's a good first step, but that doesn't solve all the funding problems in Arizona, but it's a great first step.
Jennifer, what do you want to see?
Parents in Arizona want to see 3 things. One, they want to be listened to, as Andrew indicated. Repeatedly, statewide polls indicate that Arizonans say that education is the top issue to be dealt with, and parents want to be heard, they want to be listened to, they want to be taken seriously, and they want that to be acknowledged. Secondly, they want the legislature to address school funding issues. They want stable, sufficient, and sustainable school funding beyond Prop 123. As Chuck indicated, it's a great first step, but it is certainly not going to solve the challenges that our schools face. And third, we want concrete action related to the teacher retention issue, because we know that at the end of the day, a great teacher in every Arizona classroom is the key to our economic prosperity as a state.
I want to get to teacher retention in a second, but Prop 123, what happens? I mean, first of all, the vote is going to happen relatively late in the session, if
That's
not
right.
after the session. What can the legislature do regarding school funding prior to knowing whether or not 123 passes?
Well, the settlement terms of Prop 123 allowed a great deal of money to stay in the general fund. This is money that the Joint Legislative Budget Committee says is replicable year after year. So that money is available. That can be, a portion of that can be used to deploy toward other education funding needs. We have a host of them, and there have even been reports that have said Prop 123 will add a great deal of money, but it by no means makes up for all the deficits, all the cuts that have happened over the last few years. So we can look at high priority areas. I think the big thing is to keep that money coming into districts so that those decisions about what to do with revenue are made closest to students.
The idea of getting the money into districts has been talked about in a variety of ways. Some are saying reward the high-performing schools, get more kids into those schools. Others are saying the high-performing schools are the last ones that need the extra help. It's the lower performing. How do you work that
Well,
dynamic?
first, I think there's a lot of movement in this state, and people realize how important it is to have some funding or some support for students who are at risk. Those are the student population that really needs the additional support and the additional help. And to follow up on what Andrew talked about, for the legislature, there's about $70 million in new cuts that will go into place if the legislature doesn't make some changes this year in this legislative session on how they fund career and technical education and how they count students. So there's some things that the legislature needs to do so they don't undo some of the good from Prop 123 by having new cuts come into the schools.
And that goes back to the question I asked Andrew. Obviously, this vote is going to happen. It's going to be up or down. And it seems most folks think that 123 is going to pass, but still, how much can the legislature do before that vote?
Well, I think there are two critical issues. Chuck alluded to one of them, and that is restoring cuts that are on the table for career and technical education. It's proven to be successful in districts across the state. I think they need to take a hard look at that and address that issue. I think they need to look at this issue of a move to current year funding, which is going to be detrimental to schools.
What does that mean, current year funding? Define it for us.
It's about taking the student count as it sits today, as opposed to this current system, which is schools receiving money this year for the student population they had last year. And the move to current year funding is going to take resources out of the classroom and out of the schools and away from their discretion. It's not a step in the right direction.
It compounds problems that Arizona has already tried that have done nothing but add to chaos. And that's really what it does. It removes some of the stability of funding. It challenges districts that are trying to do strategic planning and look ahead and be able to budget to their priorities. And it challenges that very badly. It is very difficult to scale up, and by the Department of Ed's own admission, we don't have the data system in place. More than that, Arizona has been down the road of trying to do differentiated funding. What parents are saying is not, we want some of our schools funded. What parents are saying very clearly is, we want our students to be more than test takers. We want our schools to be well funded. We want our teachers to be happy in what they do so that they stay, and we know that they are capable of better work than just administering standardized tests.
And as far as testing those standardized tests, AZ Merit, your thoughts on that, Common Core, whatever they're calling it these days, your thoughts, are we moving forward? Is it at risk at the legislature? What's happening down there?
Well, I think there's certainly some people who are against certain testing programs that we have in place. Andrew and I were talking earlier, and a lot of people are taking the wrong tact, especially with how they look at evaluating teachers and standardized test scores in that manner. So I think it needs to be looked at. We need to have some different programs in place in this state.
Please.
Well, relatively speaking, the AZ Merit test is a good assessment. It's really not the design of the assessment, it's the policies attached to them. We have joined a nation across the United States in putting too much on standardized test scores. This was a centerpiece of the reform camp for a number of years that did nothing to lessen achievement gaps, really didn't move the academic bar in Arizona, and the overuse of standardized tests is not only something that parents are pushing back against, but leads to differentiated funding, and ultimately the money flows to students of or schools of higher socioeconomic background. And in short, you end up creating winners and losers, and folks in the education community simply don't see the world that way.
How do you get accountability? How do you know who's doing something that needs to be repeated and who's doing something that needs to be corrected?
Well, I think there's a couple of different answers to that question. One, I don't think any of us are advocating that we not have a way to measure the academic progress of our children. But we all know that our children are more than a single test score, and teachers are more than a single test score. And so it's about creating an accountability formula that takes into account a variety of facets. And there's lots of data out there that paints a very rich picture of what's happening in classrooms so that we have accountability and we know the public investment is being spent wisely.
Teacher retention has been mentioned a couple of times here. What can the legislature do to keep teachers in the classroom?
Well, the main thing they can do is provide districts with additional resources so they can provide adequate compensation to their teachers. One of the reasons that people leave the profession is because they just can't live comfortably on the money that they're being paid. So the legislature, the first thing is to put some additional resources in schools so we're not near the bottom in terms of what we have per pupil, so teachers can be paid more so they can be retained.
We've put teachers on a very shaky three-legged stool in this state over the last few years. We have paid them flat or decreasing salaries. They're actually paying money to stay in the profession they love. We've created a toxic testing environment that we've already discussed, and we have an evaluation system for teachers and principals that, because it is so reliant on test scores, is actually dysfunctional. We have the opportunity now more than ever with the federal reauthorization going from No Child Left Behind to the Every Student Succeeds Act, which returns a great deal more authority to the states. We can get a lot of this right, and we can begin this legislative session.
I would agree that it's about addressing basic compensation. It's about providing resources like textbooks and materials and professional development that teachers rely on to do the job we as Arizonans have asked them to do. I also think it's about eliminating the negative rhetoric about teachers. And it's about demonstrating visibly our respect for teachers and stop this notion that there's thousands of people waiting in line to be teachers and that anyone can be a teacher. And our rhetoric is very powerful in terms of how we describe what teachers do.
But that rhetoric is very strong at the legislature and has been there for a while. Do you foresee any changes along those lines?
Well, I hope so. I hope that, and again, I think what I see as optimistic is that the business community is with us more than they've ever been, and hopefully they need to express to some legislators that we need to do things to keep our good teachers. We need to pay them more. We need to have them respected in their jobs that they're doing, which they do very well.
There's another positive sign, and that is that you have legislators on both sides of the aisle in both chambers saying we have gone too far with our test scores, that we need to come back to what voters and parents are telling us work. Again, educators who want to stay in their profession and feel that they can be successful. Students with a nice broad curriculum that is far beyond just the tested subjects. Schools that have the resources, equipment, technology to move students forward so that they're prosperous after they leave the K-12 system. And it's really, I think, a good sign that you've got folks in both parties that are saying, enough, we need to change course.
We have had, though, folks from the legislature, we have them on the show all the time, and often some folks will say, more money does not equate to better education. And the concern out there, and we'll have critics writing in saying it's the alpha and omega for the education folks is money, money, money. Is that a valid criticism?
Well, depending on what the dollars are used for. Like in any business, bringing in more revenue, it's what you do with that revenue to increase your business activity or whatever. But one thing is that we have a different tone. Would you have a governor in the state of Arizona now who's saying we need more money for schools, we need to increase compensation for teachers? So hopefully some of that filters down to the legislature, but just more dollars. But if the money's used to compensate teachers, it's used to reduce class size, it's used to provide additional services to students who need special services, that's going to make a difference.
I think we should ask an athlete if oxygen is important to the performance in a sport, or if proper nutrition actually impacts athletic performance, because it's a little disingenuous in a state that has cut more from the K-12 education system in 5 years than any other state in the country and has some of the lowest indicators of education investment, for folks who have been responsible for some of those cuts to say, gosh, we just don't understand why it's always about money with you folks.
Well, and they don't understand. That's why I'm asking
Well,
the
we
question.
are educators, and we will take that challenge up this session.
We had business folks on last night, and they were saying that, the Arizona schools aren't so bad. Some of the best schools in the country are here in Arizona. With that in mind, define public education. And do you think that some folks at the legislature are a little confused about that? The concept of public education as opposed to private schools. Not necessarily genuinely confused, but the concept of public education serves perhaps folks that aren't necessarily in their neighborhood or in their sphere.
I think a fundamental American principle is access to quality education by all children, so that all children have an equal opportunity to experience the American dream. And that means that every Arizona classroom has to have a quality teacher, adequate resources, strong direction, and leadership.
I think the confusion extends to ownership. Who owns the district public schools in Arizona? Taxpayers do, and they elect a governing board out of their local community. And that governing board is accountable to them and accountable for what they do with that taxpayer money. We also have a publicly funded system called charters. Right or wrong, does not operate that way. The notion of a governing board is very, very different. The notion of ownership and what happens to those taxpayer dollars is very, very different. A call for charter reform would be in order if it increased academic accountability and financial transparency of publicly funded but privately run charter schools.
Last question. How do we get the schools that are among the best in the country and that the business leaders can't wait to tell people that are looking to relocate, look at these. These are very high-performing schools. Some of our public schools, very, very well done. How do you get that across the board?
Well, I think we're moving in that direction, but the one thing that I find interesting is both charter schools and traditional districts now across the state, even the high-performing schools that people are touting, all are saying we need additional resources to do our job. So I think if we put additional resources in our schools, that word gets out to the rest of the country that we have good schools in Arizona, we're adequately funding good schools in Arizona. That's going to help economic development. It's going to bring more businesses, more tax revenue, and it'll help pay for those additional resources for schools.
All right, real quickly.
I think we're getting better at identifying what makes a great school a great school. And so to replicate that, they're going to need the resources to make that happen.
All right, very good. We got to stop it right there. Good to have you all here. Great
Thanks so
discussion.
much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Wednesday on Arizona Horizon, advocates for local government discuss what they want from the legislature this year, and we'll talk about what some see as the increasing militarization of local police forces. That's the next Arizona Horizon. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.